Am I being too hard on the Badgers?
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers. I am your show host, Ryan Harings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Thank you for being here. Thank you for making this your first listen every day and being an everydayer. I really do appreciate it. Today's episode, some coaching questions from the Indiana game, a couple bright spots we need to highlight. But first, am I being too hard on this team? So post game, we had our live reaction show, and I had several people, including a comment we're going to put up. I mean, nothing negative, but several people who disagreed with me, which is great. Disagreements are phenomenal. I always say that. That's what this community is built on. Let's respectfully disagree and let's have the discussions. I think that's amazing. But several people said, "Man, Ryan, you're a little too hard on this team." Went into Indiana, the #2 team in the country, maybe the best team in the country, probably the best offense in the country, potential 1-1 NFL draft pick in Fernando Mendoza. He's probably going to go 1 or 2 or 3 overall. And it was 10-7 at halftime. They held them under their average, their scoring average substantially. They covered. And I was frustrated in the second half. And I came on the show and I said, that second half frustrated me. I didn't think they did enough. I wanted to see more. And I had several people we'll start with this comment here, said, Ryan, a bit too negative. I think they did okay on offense, particularly in the first half. It's a road game against a championship favorite team with a freshman quarterback that's from David. Am I too hard on the Badgers with that? Here's what I would say. I think there are several positives you can take out of this game. I've continued to say this team hasn't quit on Luke Fickle or this coaching staff, which is phenomenal. Some people say that's a low bar and we shouldn't praise a team for not quitting. That's bananas. That's BS. You do praise effort because effort is a culture thing. Effort is not all coaches coach effort. Not all coaches can keep a team bought in when they've won 3 games. There's a lot of other issues here, but I give them a lot of credit for keeping this team together, playing hard. They're very clearly still invested in this. They're flying around. You have a guy like Christian Allegro out there with a broken arm in a gigantic club. This team is still very invested in playing hard. I give the coaching staff a lot of credit for that. Here's where I got frustrated in the second half. And here's where I pushed back on this a little too negative, maybe narrative. Last week against Washington, Carter Smith comes in, true freshman quarterback, hadn't played much. The weather was terrible. And you're like, okay, I get us not being able to do much offensively in this game, right? He hasn't been practicing with the ones. The weather is atrocious. This Washington's also a really good defense. But from week 1 to week 2 with him, having an entire week with the starters, I expected to see a little more growth. I wanted to see a little more growth. I mean, this is a player that we're towards the end of the season now. We should be able to, as a Big Ten team, get more than 22 yards in the second half, regardless of the opponent, regardless of the injuries. You could have 3 drives, just line up, run the ball up the middle each time for 3 yards, and then punt the ball and have more than 22 yards and a half. I just am never going to be okay with the Badgers putting up 22 yards of offense in the second half. And quite frankly, in my opinion, punting away some opportunities to take a couple chances. It frustrated me. And it frustrated me because I love this program. And it frustrated me because we've seen progress. We've seen this team growing. This was a team that was 10-7 at the half. Take a couple shots. The worst is going to happen. He's going to throw a pick. Well, he did that too, and you weren't taking shots. I can understand the narrative of, well, you saw what happened when we tried to push the ball down the field, so why take shots? I think the opposite is true. We saw what happened when we didn't push the ball down the field, right? You can't move the ball. You can't run a quarterback draw on 3rd and 9, in my opinion, in a game that's still relatively close. Were we beating Indiana? No, but that's not the point. The point is, you were in a situation where maybe a miracle flip could have switched because of the way you played that first half. So you got to come out of the second half and play with a little more sense of urgency, in my opinion. There was a punt on 4th and 1 when you were down 17. I felt like you go for it there too. That's why I was disappointed. Am I being a bit too negative? Maybe. That I certainly could be, David, and I appreciate it. But I felt like this was a chance in the second half to push some chips into the middle and just see what happened. And it frustrated me a little bit. And I need to see growth. We need to see growth from this offense. It's not okay, in my opinion, for the rest of the year just to be like, it's okay, they're young and hurt. You got to move the ball against Indiana and Minnesota, or Illinois and Minnesota too. Those are 2 big games coming up. You got to find a way to get more than 22 yards and a half. So I definitely hear you. Maybe I was too negative. Maybe I still am too negative. But again, it comes from a spot of loving this team, wanting this team to continue to progress, and being in a moment where I felt hope in the first half and wanting to see if we can make that dicey into the fourth quarter. Mr. Taco says, I can't help but wonder if the coaching staff was evaluating players in preseason, first part of the season. How are all the underclassmen performing so much better than the upperclassmen? So I would point out that there are several upperclassmen. I like this. We talked about this a couple times, Mr. Taco. I'm going to talk about it again here in a second. Some questionable maybe playing time decisions from this staff. But let's also point out, not all the underclassmen are outperforming the upperclassmen. You got a guy like Daryl Peterson, who is playing incredible. Just the best ball of his career. And I think at the beginning of the season, a lot of fans would have said, don't play him, put Nicholas Clayton in, for example. You have Ben Barton, who, again, is also just playing inspired football, right, at the point of the attack on defense. And a lot of people before the season probably would have said, don't play Ben Barton, play Jalen Williams or play Dylan Johnson more. So there are several veterans, I think it's fair to point out, that have really stepped up this year, specifically in that front seven. But I do think this coaching staff just has to be a hair trigger quicker on when you have a young dynamic player, and it doesn't have to be a true freshman. It could be a redshirt freshman. I just can't believe that you're watching practice and saying Mason Posa shouldn't be out there until Oregon. I think there's some players where you have to try to get those talents on the field a little bit quicker, especially in a season that wasn't going well. That's an area of growth, I think, for the staff. I would like to see that happen a little more dynamically in the future. But I think it is fair to point out that there are some upperclassmen that are also really balling out for this team, specifically on defense. The Commandant Clink, really good friend of the show, said defense is playing well enough to give them a chance to win games, but with an offense whose best scoring mark in the Big Ten is 13 points, UW's chances of winning again are remote. I sadly agree with this. I know there's a lot of people, and maybe I'm going to get accused of being too negative again. I'm sorry. I'm usually not a negative guy. If you watch this show, you know that. But you have Illinois and Minnesota coming up on the schedule. I would love nothing more than to beat Bielema and then beat the brakes off PJ Fleck. But this offense, as Commandant said, can't score. This offense can't score. They're the second lowest scoring offense in the country, ahead of only Massachusetts. We're averaging 12.4 points per game, I think is the updated mark. We have 5 field goals and 15 touchdowns on the year. Indiana has like 62 touchdowns. This offense can't score, guys. So I know there's a lot of people, based on how we played against Oregon, Washington, and even that first half against Indiana, that are thinking, all right, I think we can beat Illinois and Minnesota. I don't know how we can score. You're not going to – are they going to score more than 10 against Illinois? I don't know how. Especially if Gideon Ituka is down. This offense can't throw the ball. They're not going to be able to run the ball very effectively without Ituka, in my opinion. I don't know how they score enough points to beat Illinois or Minnesota. And Minnesota's not that good. But guys, this offense is the worst Power 4 offense in the country, and it's not close. That's what was frustrating to me in that second half of Indiana. This offense is just, it's unbearably bad. And yes, there are a billion injuries, which factor heavily into this. Wisconsin, without Gideon Ituka, is going to be on fifth string running back. Injuries across the offensive line. We know where we've been at it with quarterback, but however you want to slice it. And I don't think play calling at times has been the greatest either. This offense is it is a broken down car that has since been vandalized and set on fire. It's not moving. It's not moving anywhere. So I don't know. I'm kind of with Commandant here. And listen, I'm going to be rooting for it. I hope to be wrong. If they beat Illinois, I'll be the first one to be like, yes, I didn't necessarily see that coming, but I love it. But guys, they can't score, and you can't win games if you can't score. So I don't know. I don't know if they can get another win, and it just comes down to how bad the offense is. The defense will give them a chance in both games, no doubt, because the defense is balling out right now, and I think that's real. But the offense is a train wreck. Drew J., there's a shimmer of brightness for the future. Indiana is real. The youth on this team and how they're playing is promising. Hang in there. No, this is great, and I agree. You want to look at the bright spots. You see Posa and Catalano, and then understand you have 2 more years of both those guys. 2 more years of them in the weight room. 2 more years of them getting reps. 2 more years of both of those players getting those game experience points, getting stronger, getting faster. What are these guys going to look like when they're a quote unquote finished product? They're advanced as a freshman, so maybe their jumps aren't going to be quite as massive as other players because they're pretty advanced, obviously. But they have jumps in them. They're going to be monsters. I like Eugene Hilton. I like Gideon Ituka. Certainly, you look at some of the young offensive linemen that have started to play better. You look at some of the guys on the defense line. You're going to have a guy like Perkins back next year. There's a lot of players that you can see big futures for with this Wisconsin program. And I think Drew is correct. I think that is the bright spot here. I will take 1 second for our friends of the show. We're going to come back and talk a little bit about quarterback development. Is there any blame on this coaching staff? That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. First, a quick second for our good friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel is incredible. That perfect place with the NBA going on. There's no better place to get in on the action than our good friends over at FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or if you want to ride a hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score first to those fourth quarter comebacks, plus live in-game betting that you can turn into a same-game parlay for a shot at an even bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting no matter what the score is. Right now, especially right now with the NBA really kicking in, really starting to get going. Maybe your team's making that late push. FanDuel's here for you on that. Right now, FanDuel's giving customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Head over to FanDuel.com, sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Today's episode also brought to you by our incredible partners over at Game Time. Game Time is here for all your ticketing needs. College football, there's still some of the season left, but also NFL, NBA, plus entertainment as well. Whatever you want, you can get those tickets on Game Time, and I couldn't be more excited to talk about it. Game Time gets you in the moment, the rivalries, the tailgate, the people in the stands, get caught up in that excitement and get there with our good friends over at Game Time. Right now, I use Game Time because it gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you're going to pay. They don't jack up all that other stuff that a lot of other places do. You're going to get the best prices, last-minute flash deals. You don't have to worry about logistics. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. All right, let's talk quarterbacks for a second here, because this is interesting to me. And this is something that I was a little frustrated with. I expected to see a little more growth from the passing game with Carter Smith getting a week of reps. And again, I'm not talking about I expected them to come out there and become the greatest show on turf like Kurt Warner and throw the ball around. But incrementally, I expected to be a little better. Beach Bum asks, I would like to know why Kenny Guyton continues to get a free pass. None of the quarterbacks are ready or show improvement. So I wanted to kind of break this down. Some of this isn't on Guyton. Some of this is not on Guyton. We talked, none of the quarterbacks are ready or show improvement. Well, his quarterback would have been Billy Edwards. Got hurt. That's not on him. Then you have Danny O'Neal. Well, Danny O'Neal came in as a backup. There's only so much you can do if you're Kenny Guyton and your first guy who got most of the reps, in spring and in fall. He then gets hurt. Throughout the season, you're still trying to get Billy Edwards ready. Danny O'Neal wasn't brought in to be a starter. He's probably not a real Big Ten starting talent. He's undersized. He doesn't have the greatest arm. He runs with moxie and he's strong, but he's a sophomore who doesn't have great physical tools, who was probably a starter at a lower level for a reason. It's kind of difficult, and who's gotten banged up and who's playing behind a bad offensive line. It's kind of difficult for me to put that on Kenny Guyton. Then you have Hunter Simmons, who was never brought in to be the guy. Like, he was a backup FCS quarterback. Good arm, not that mobile. Again, given the fact that he's worked with Kenny Guyton for a very limited amount of time, he wasn't getting starter reps. It's just hard for me to say, well, Hunter Simmons is on Kenny Guyton. I think the one you could look at and say, should Carter Smith be further along as a true freshman, having worked and enrolled early, having worked with Kenny Guyton since the spring? I think that's a fair criticism if you want to have that. I don't fully know. I think a lot of true freshmen are never going to be ready regardless. You can have them working with Bill Walsh, and maybe they're not going to be ready their first year. It's really difficult. It's hard to play quarterback. It's one of the most difficult positions in sports for a reason. So all this to be said, I'm not out on Kenny Guyton. I also am not in on him. I think it's wait and see. I don't think he's been given a fair shake. And I want to be fair on this. I know he's a good recruiter. I know players really like him. Can he develop quarterbacks? You got to give him more than 1 year, and especially with the injuries he's had and the issues the offense has dealt with that are out of Kenny Guyton's hands. I'm not out on Kenny Guyton right now for those reasons, but I understand the question for sure. Craig Fissel, Carter's the guy. Play the hell out of him. It will pay dividends in 26, and of course, the secondary was going to be under pressure. We better defend the run. I like the first part of this from Craig. Carter's the guy. This is going to, no matter what, these reps are really good for him. It's going to play huge dividends. whether he's the guy next year or whether he's going to quarterback battle if they bring somebody in the portal. And they will bring somebody in the portal. Just forewarning y'all, I know people don't like that sometimes, but they will. But these reps and these growing moments are huge for Carter. And I'm not down on Carter after the Indiana game. I don't care that he threw a pick, really. I mean, I care, but he's a freshman. Those are mistakes freshmen make. He's going to get better from that. So I think these reps, these last 4 games, you don't burn the red shirt, incredibly important for Carter Smith. I agree with that. Kay says, reality check. Michigan has the best overall freshman quarterback in the nation who has taken all the first-team reps since spring, and Michigan barely beat Northwestern today. You guys are expecting way too much. Another one, I had multiple people reach out and say, Ryan, man, you're being too negative. I can't look at 22 yards of offense in the second half and say, I'm expecting more of that, say I'm expecting way too much. I just can't. I can't square that in my head. And it's probably not fair. That might be the fan side of me. Like I have kind of a fan side and a bit of a journalist side, and they mix together somewhere in the melting pot. And what you get is the amalgam of those two things, right? It's the joining of those two parts of my brain, the fan and the kind of the journalist side of it. But you got to get more than 22 yards. You're a Big Ten team, regardless of opponent, injuries. That's not acceptable. It's to me, that's just to me. That's my opinion. It doesn't make it the right one. It just makes it mine. But I think you got to get better. And I don't want at the end of this year to have 2 more games where we score like 7 points and 13 points and say, but it's okay because they were just young and hurt. You got to start showing growth. You got to improve. Carter Smith is going to be going on his second start, right? This offense line has coalesced a little bit and come together. These receivers haven't been hurt. Lance Mason hasn't been hurt. You got to show growth. And is that fair? Yeah. Well, actually, I think it is. I think it is kind of fair. Is it tough? Yeah, it is tough because of the injuries. 100%. But you got to show growth. And that's where I'm at. Anyway, really appreciate everybody on Wisconsin. Thank you so much for tuning in and making this your first listen. As always, we will definitely talk later. If you like the show, hit the subscribe button. It really does help out. I don't ask for it often, but it really does help out. So if you like the show, hit the subscribe button, leave a review. Appreciate you guys so much. On Wisconsin, we'll talk later.